as a community center and a little small museum. We're renovating it for administrative office space and as a visitor contact point. In a couple of 2 or 3 years, we hope to pursue the design and development of a new visitor center that will better meet our needs and visitors. But right now, we'll be using this until that day comes. So, new restoration work to the historical structures, new ADA access, other infrastructural improvements, new parking lots, new split rail fencing. So a lot of work's going on here during this first phase of development. And then probably a couple of years out, we'll start the next phase of development, you know. So we have a 5-year plan in place here.
Oh.
And,
Nice.
Little by little, we're chipping away at being able to provide not only us the resources needed to best manage and interpret the site, but also to best serve you guys as the public, all right?
Nice.
Yeah. So, where in your family line does Jacob fall?
He's my 5th great uncle.
5th great uncle.
Yeah. Priscilla was our 5th great grandmother, and Maddie or Matthew.
Yeah.
He was our 5th
Well, cool.
grandfather. So.
Yeah, we got Priscilla. Okay, and her father was Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Michael was the patriarch, and
That's
one of the confusing things about studying the history with the Wolff family and any of these families that existed here 200 years ago is that it was a common practice for, as an example, let's say your name was Michael and you had a son and you wanted to pass that legacy on, you'd name him Michael.
Oh.
Then when he had a son, he might name him Michael. So when you're researching this history, unless you have dates to go by, it's hard to decipher when it's written in the vernacular back then.
Yeah.
Well, which Michael are they talking
That's
about?
true.
It takes a little while to figure that out.
We're finding that out.
Yeah, so
Now,
exactly.
This
Yeah.
is the Jacob that was brother to Michael. Is that what you're talking about?
No, this is his son.
Yeah.
Good
Huh?
son.
Oh, okay.
There
so
were several Michaels.
Yeah.
There were several Jacobs. But
Yeah.
Jacob Wolff was born in
Major Jacob.
Yeah, he was born in North Carolina in 1786. And he and his family arrived in Arkansas Territory around 1820.
So is that Michael's dad or no?
Michael. Okay. Major, the one that you see in photos, that's Jacob, and he's Katie's brother.
Oh, so Michael is the father to
It's
Jacob.
the father, the one who
Oh.
spoke German in the house, but didn't speak outside the house.
Michael is the father. Okay, and so Michael's the father, and then Jacob was Katie's brother. Okay.
What's?
Be careful.
Okay.
I have a historic structures report. In other words, it's the report that the project historian created following the restoration work of the courthouse from 1999 to 2002. You can contact the publishing company in Little Rock, and for about $80, somewhere between $80 and $100, they can reproduce this document for you, which gives you
That would be
a
great.
fairly inclusive history and background, not only of the Wolff family in its entirety,
Wow.
but also the work that was done here.
Wow.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, that
So
would.
remind me when we get through
Yeah.
to give you the information to contact this
Okay.
company in Little Rock.
Oh, that would be awesome.
We
Okay.
would pay that.
Well, because we went to that,
Historical Society.
just recently, we just came back from that
The Heritage.
heritage place, and we made copies of the little booklet that they had on the Wolff House.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But any official way.
This is a formal document written by a professional historian that would provide you with a great deal of insight to your family's history.
Great.
Oh,
That'd be
yeah.
awesome.
And it would give you insight to what was done here and why.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
All right, well, let's take a walk around.
All right.
Oh, real quick, I was just curious. Now, was this house? I thought I read somewhere. Was this house moved?
No.
No, it was
No.
always here, right?
It was built where it stands in 1829.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, the Wolff's cabin, Jacob's brother, John Wolff, It was moved here in the 90s.
Okay,
And
maybe that's part
that's
of it.
the cabin we're restoring down here right now.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
It
no.
was located near Calico Rock, farther south on Highway 5, and we're restoring it. We're doing an exterior restoration. A couple of years from now, we want to restore the interior, so if you were to visit, and when we open it to the public, you'd be able to go inside and see what the dwelling of an early 19th century family looked like.
Okay.
Okay.
That'd be awesome. I'm so about to come back. So did Michael Wolff live here as well for a period of time? Or?
He came over, I think, when him had passed.
We believe Michael is buried down at the Wolff family cemetery. If he was here, and I'd have to go back and reread that part of the family history, it was for a very short period of time.
I heard that they did a lot of business construction in New Orleans, and he had taken a trip to New Orleans. And on his way, he had the steamboat, and on his way up to Kentucky, he had passed originally, and then they moved his body over there. No, Michael.
Jacob. No, we do not know
Michael.
where Jacob is buried.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of unmarked graves at the Wolff family cemetery, but we just simply do not know where Jacob was buried. Okay, that's a mystery.
Michael was the one that was on the steamboat and had the heart attack.
Yeah, I would have to go back and reread that. There's good history on all of the family descendants, and I haven't entertained that reading in quite some time about the exterior family. I'm mainly focusing on Jacob and his family here. But all of that is well documented for you if you decide to purchase that book or get a reprint
Yes.
of it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, Jacob and his family spent roughly 20 years in and around Hopkins County, Kentucky. And he dabbled in a little bit of politics there, and we believe that he could have brought the architectural style for this courthouse from the one in Hopkins County, Kentucky. He wore a lot of different hats. He was a master log builder, he was a master blacksmith, he was a territorial politician, he was an entrepreneur, he had a mercantile business here. He owned 2 ferry operations on the river. He had 400 acres of land on the river valley, and he was the postmaster. So Jacob was Liberty, Arkansas.
Wow.
He was the catalyst of why this all developed here 200 years ago.
Yours is pretty. Yours is pretty extensive.
Yeah. He pretty much controlled everything. He was a benevolent person. I mean, he legitimately pursued things here in this new upstart frontier community for the better good of the people living here and moving into this part of the country. But he also had a personal agenda as well. Okay. The original home was on the north side of this structure, about where that light pole is. All right.
Okay.
And it was a 2-story structure, log structure. And they lived in that dwelling. He had a very large family. He had 16 children. Now, that was with 3 different wives. Okay. And then he had a lot of extended family living here as well. The court setting originally would have been nothing more than the living room in that first structure.
Yeah.
That was common practice back then. He was a keen visionary. He had an idea of what it would take to make this upstart community work. He started cutting the pine timbers around 1825. There was a lot of speculation here on exactly when this structure was built. So during the restoration from 1999 to 2002, Dr. David Stale from University of Arkansas at the architect's request, came over and did board test of about 30 different timbers, and called a dendrochronology test, and he took that back to his lab. The earliest timber dated to around 1825. The oldest timber dated to around 1828. He got approval as the territorial representative from the legislature in 1829 to build the structure as the county's first territorial courthouse. It takes yellow pine about 6 months to a year to season, okay, to cure.
Yeah.
So 5 years before he built this thing, he was already envisioning something like this to happen. All right?
Doing the prep work.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories about Jacob is when he authored the bill and presented it to the legislature in Little Rock to get approval to build this. He wanted to be a fair person about it. He wanted to bid it out. So, as an example, if you were contractors, you would have had a chance to bid on it, you would have had a chance to bid on it, so forth and so on. Jacob owned the 76 acres of land here. All right, today all we have left is 2 acres.
I see.
But he owned the original 76 acres through a land grant through the U.S. government. It wouldn't have mattered if you would have bid $1,000 to build it or you would have bid $500 to build it. Jacob raised his hot little hand and said, hey, I own the land. I will donate the land for the better good of building the territorial courthouse. And he got the bid, and nobody challenged him on it, okay? Well, it gets better. He put a reverter clause in his bill, meaning in the event, because Arkansas was on the back side of statehood by 1836, it was territorial courthouse here from 1829 to 1835. Then the seat of justice moved to a more populated area. The reverter clause meant in the event that the seat of justice moves to a more populated area, then it would revert back to the ownership of the person in which built it. That was Jacob Wolff. So he had all of his land and the structure deeded back to him. From 1830.
He was a good businessman.
From 1835 to 1863,
What an entrepreneur.
it was the Wolff family home.
Yeah.
So yeah, now the architecture is a wonderful representation of the vernacular architecture that existed back then. Be very careful. Cross the fence.
I was wondering about the
I'm gonna let you
timbers
guys
when we were looking at the house.
Hold on.
So-
Oh, there we go.
I got to stabilize myself. Sorry.
Oh.
See what I mean?
all right, hold on, Dallas.
Okay.
All right, ready? All right, there we go.
So each one of these were hand cut and hand hewed. No power tools back then. Everything was done with hand tools. All right. And this dovetail notching, it's called dovetail notching because it's kind of the shape of a dove's tail.
Yeah.
And it's a process where it interlocks each course of timbers and holds it in. You cannot take my knife blade and fit it in between these timbers. That's how tight it is. And this was all hand cut.
Wow.
I would challenge someone today with all of today's modern technology and tools to replicate this. I doubt that they would be able to do so.
Yeah.
Okay? The daubing was made out of crushed limestone, mixed down to a paste, and mixed with horsehair for texture. And they would apply this daubing in between these 6 to 7 inch crevices between these massive timbers, okay? And it's very, very well built. It's a true testament to the craftsmanship that existed back then.
Yeah. Huh?
I've always wondered about that.
Yeah.
I've seen the way everything sits.
Right.
And then
yeah.
this, and I'm like, it's got to be some type of clay and horsehair.
Yeah.
They used a lot of that.
It's a bonding, right?
Yes.
A
Yeah.
binder.
I actually still have cushions that have horsehair in it.
Really?
I'm not kidding.
Now, each of the rooms, we've got it shut down right now due to work going on it. As a courthouse, upstairs was the courtroom. This room in here was the county clerk's office, and this room in here, if a case was deemed necessary to go to trial, the jury would have deliberated that case in this room in here. Okay. I'll take you upstairs and I'll open the courtroom for you.
Oh, nice. And of course, when this place fully opens, we'll have access to the downstairs. Right?
You'll have access to the whole building.
Oh, to the whole building.
Yeah.
Come this way? Okay.
Yeah, well, you can tour on your own, or you can take a self-guided tour.
Ah, okay.
We should be open back up by May 1st.
Actually, gonna get my real camera out now.
I'm getting this all on
Okay.
video, so I'll put it on Dropbox, and you'll be able to see it.
Okay.
Ooh, yeah.
So a traditional courtroom setting would have been, your judge would have sat up front here, okay? This would have been a plaintiff and defendant's lawyers. This would have been your court recorder. The defendant or the plaintiff themselves would have sit here on a bench in the middle of the room. We got everything covered up to protect the furniture. It's replica period furniture. Our conservator in Little Rock is building the furniture for me. But the whole building is set up as a courthouse. You would have had traveling judges and lawyers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This not only served as the Izard County Courthouse, but it served as a circuit court for about 3 other different counties. So your judges and lawyers would have traveled from other areas, and they would have held cases here, overheard cases here for about a week. They would have court maybe 2 to 3 times a year. During the summer and spring, early fall, people from around the countryside would come here, camp out on the grounds, cook, barter, sell, trade, visit. They might have had business with the court, but it was a big festive event back then, okay? You would have had both criminal and misdemeanor cases heard here. Like I said, if a case was deemed necessary to go to trial, the jury, unlike the jury that we understand today, you would have been lucky if you'd have found somewhere between 5 and 6 guys that were credible to sit in on your jury back then. Now, architecturally speaking, outside of these 2 repair areas on the floor here, this is the original floor from 1829.
I was going to ask about that.
During the restoration, a new roof had to be put on, but the rafters on which the roof sits on are the original rafters from 1829. If you look at the top, if you look where the rafters lap over each other, you'll see a wooden pin called a tree nail that goes through each one of the lap joints.
I was wondering about the floor, and but yeah, I can now. How about that bench?
That's not that's a very old bench, but it's not
Not
original.
part of the building. Okay.
Oh, I see. There's something else.
Yeah.
So, okay, we did the courthouse type stuff here, but where do they actually live? The family.
Well, they had their home to the north of this structure.
Okay, that's what you were saying. So they didn't actually
Yeah.
live in this building.
Not until 1835.
Oh, after 1835.
When the seat of justice moved to a more populated area,
Then
they moved into this structure. Actually, they used both dwellings. But this was the Wolff family home from 1835 until Jacob's death in 1863. So if you lived during this time period in this 1,500, 2,000 square foot structure, you were the talk of the town. Okay? And by today's standards, the Wolffs were a very affluent family. Very well off. As an entrepreneur, he harvested his crops each year and sent them to markets as far away as New Orleans. He provided his family with nice clothes and furnishings. He was a well-respected, well-known, highly regarded individual, pillar of the community. So they had it going on. Now, The Civil War totally devastated families in a very rural area like this. And Jacob and his family were strong supporters of the Confederacy. A lot of his sons went off to fight for the Confederacy, okay? They also were strong supporters of the institution of slavery. We know from an 1850 census that Jacob Wolff and his family owned 15 slaves, and they had slave quarters built here on site. Part of our investigations here is archaeological surveys, okay? We had a ground penetrating radar survey of the property done last May, which highlights for us prominent areas, anomalies under the ground that we want to further investigate. And one of those is, can we locate, or is it under the highway, the old slave quarters, the old blacksmith shop, the old residence, the old cook shack, so forth and so on, the barns and stables. These are all things that we'll be looking for, because we do have in our possession, archivally speaking, we have a copy of the map of Jacob's youngest son in the early 1900s. He honored an interview with a local paper. He brought to that interview this map that showed the structures as he remembered them when he grew up here as a child. Now, that's a good reference point, but you have to be able to investigate these areas archaeologically to validate that information, okay? So, a lot of important, very distinctive culture and histories represented here. Our 6 interpretive themes that are directly tied to the property is we promote river travel and trade, Native American culture that was here in the valley. Through a U.S. treaty in 1817, the west bank of the river was a Cherokee preserve. The Cherokee, the Shawnee, the Delaware lived there for a short time until the Indian Removal Act moved them into...
Right over here on this side of the
all
river?
up and down the west bank of that's the North Fork. You have 2 rivers converging here.
Okay.
And so on the west bank of the far west bank of the river is where the Cherokee, the Shawnee, and the Delaware were set up.
Okay.
And then you had the Osage, who traditionally, in the 17 and early 1800s, they dominated, they controlled the Ozarks, because this was traditional hunting grounds for them. And they were at war, conflict with the Cherokee and the Shawnee and the Delaware. So,
fighting for it.
You know, and they also were heavily invested in the fur trading industry that went on here as well. So a lot of really good history here. So, you know, our interpretation represents river travel and trade, Native American culture, territorial politics, early statehood, slavery in the Ozarks, very labor-intensive projects, a little bit different than agricultural labor-based slavery in the South and Southeast. And then the Civil War, that's where we end our interpretation. So our interpretation's from 1829, when this structure was built, until Jacob's death in 1863.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, what did happen in this room?
This, we have knowledge of a couple of uses of this room. John P. Houston, who was
There you go. I was just telling
the court clerk here,
there we go.
was regarded also as the caretaker of the structure, and it's been documented that he used this room sometimes as his personal quarters. And then when Jacob Wolff and his wife, his family moved into the structure, it's believed that this was their master bedroom. If you will.
What was that date again? 16 what? Or
1863.
Okay. I also read, please tell me, because the interesting part is I was like, there was conflict between John and Sam Houston, and Sam Houston came here a couple of times looking for his brother, and he hid. Or so it says that he hid. He wanted nothing to do with his brother. He was here.
There was a there were
rumors.
You know, but Sam, they were in conflict between each other.
He didn't like what he was doing.
It didn't take much for John to. He had a real fiery temper. It didn't take much to antagonize him. And he didn't like some of the things that Sam was involved with. I don't think he liked the wife that Sam was married to. It was trivial personality conflict type stuff. Reportedly, Sam, I think, came through Arkansas once. But yeah, there was that conflict going on, that inner brother conflict going on. But so, you know.
These are fireplaces?
You had your own fireplace. There was a fireplace in each room on each floor. Now, these metal bars were part of the restoration work from 99 to 02. The walls are starting to lean out a little bit. But if I was 190 years old, I might lean to one side or the other too.
Right.
So these stabilization bars help keep pressure on the walls.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you sometimes things as they age, you gotta do stuff to compensate for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is it's really amazing, you know, even back then, how capable people were, you know. I mean, just the way they built things and stuff. You know, a lot of times, you think they weren't very sophisticated and they weren't very smart, but they were.
Yeah, that is a cultural bias that we have. Any civilization that predates our current civilization, well, they weren't as sophisticated, they weren't as knowledgeable.
Right.
But farther from the truth than it could possibly be.
Yeah.
They used the resources afforded them, just like we do, to make the best of what they had going on around them.
Right.
And this is a true testament to the knowledge and skill set that they had in constructing this building.
I want them to build my home now.
They probably did a much better job.
I only see a few boards, and they are to the T to this, except for the year of the board.
Yeah,
I'm utterly impressed. There are a few craftsmen out there that take pride in the original.
Yeah.
That's true.
Now, is this slate? Is that the original?
That's limestone.
Limestone?
The heart. Now, I'll show you some of the reconstructed fireplaces downstairs.
Okay.
The reason these are boarded up and the upstairs fireplaces were not reconstructed is that the chimneys we have are second edition chimneys. The original chimneys were brick. More of a formal look for a building made for civic purpose, a courthouse. And at some point in the latter part of the 19th century, these became either irreparable or they weren't being used anymore. And so we boarded these up during the restoration process. It still represents that a fireplace was here, okay? But the limestone chimneys that are in place now were actually built around 1860, 1870. And now on the south side, you'll notice that half of that chimney's of brick. And we believe that they probably reconstructed that out of the original brick that was left over from the early days to complement the work that Jacob did here.
Right.
Now,
Go ahead.
was this, so there was an extra up here, or was this split like this purposely?
That was not enclosed, okay? This was not enclosed because you're not going to have your wall go up and form into the top of the gable ceiling, okay? So yeah, it was left like this. It's a petition.
So I guess we're going downstairs.
A lot. They had a good view up here, didn't they?
They built a east side porch.
Okay.
But there would not have been an east side porch here when this was built because this was the front of the property, this was the back of the property. So during the restoration, we returned it back to what it would have looked like as a territorial courthouse when it was built.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, what a view.
Oh, yeah.
Did you take it down?
I
Yeah.
think you could handle sitting here on your front porch
Oh,
overlooking
yeah.
the river.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to do something like that with my, we were building a retirement house for the years up in,
Altus,
yeah,
Altus,
you
Arkansas.
know where Ozark is, Arkansas?
I do.
Okay, it's not too far. It's not in Altus. It's like a little ways. It's up on a hillside, and I can see all the different plateaus go across. You can see Mount Acme, all the different plateaus go across, and that's. I want my house turned where I have a porch, you know, like this, where I can sit out and enjoy the view.
All right.
Yeah, my dad's family originally came from around, you know, Perryville.
Right.
And they were Army.
Oh, really?
Watch your step.
Oh yeah.
Pleasant surprise.
Thank you.
It means so much.
You live in Wisconsin?
I do.
We're at in Wisconsin.
Whitewater, near I guess near Madison, or we're called the Triangle because we've got 3 different counties collecting us, and we're about 35 minutes from Illinois on this side, 35 minutes going that way, and then there's Madison,
Right.
and Milwaukee is 40 minutes, then Chicago's an hour and a half. So we're in this little university area, which is great football team, by the way.
Wisconsin Badgers.
No, we're actually the Warhawks. We're better than the Badgers. Yeah, yeah.
Local pride. There
Yeah,
you go.
Yeah.
in fact, one of them was playing for Green Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They have Special Olympics. They do really well.
That's great that you have that kind of support.
Belushi was famous for Whitewater, the bars. You know, is it John Belushi? Yeah, the one that died.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, they've got photos of him all over.
We had lunch at this little cafe down here, and
Did you eat at the cafe or Heidi's Sandwich Shop?
Yeah, that's a good place.
That's where I had lunch today.
yeah,
Oh.
and there's
Yeah, that's great. That's a great place.
there's a girl that.
Let's see. You got the blacksmith house there.
Now I understand how he was coming back on his trip on the steamboat,
Right.
and he had passed a heart attack, and they ended up
Did you see the road right there? Right there across
Yeah.
the river?
Yeah.
That's where they had a ferry crossing. Years
Oh,
ago.
okay.
Many years ago, they had a ferry crossing.
Jacob's son was the first steamship captain that operated a boat on the river.
Really? Wow.
This family's traveling from all over. They're descendants of some of the families that originally lived here. The Wolff family, the Adams family. Oh. It's looking pretty good down there.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
yeah, that cabin does still turn out. I like the way it looks on the side. I went up there and looked out the door. It looked good. That's about the best you can do on that. And like they said, it's rough, salt, tempered. Nothing's going to be exactly. But it's almost impossible.
It's coming together nice. The guys are doing a good job putting it all together.
How was Boston? Everybody happy that came down this morning?
Yeah, they were impressed with the work being done. We had a really, really good meeting, and
Good.
so
I
everything
got
went well.
everything. So I'll definitely send you the link.
So you've got a
Okay,
5-year
yeah, 'cause I missed the one
window
part
here.
on John.
What-
Well,
But I got it in
roughly,
my
we're
head.
hoping to accomplish a lot in the next 5 years.
So
here.
what
Yeah.
all you, what is it that you're going to be?
Yeah, we're getting ready to go back around the corner.
What is
Those,
it?
those hadn't been replaced
Oh.
yet.
No,
Okay.
I understand.
What is it that they're going to be doing within the next couple years?
I'm sorry.
What kind of extra stuff are they going to be doing?
Well, we're about to finish this first phase the next 2 or 3 weeks. Some of the things that we're hoping to be able to pursue in the next phase of development is we got to put another new roof on the Wolff house. These cedar shake shingles are only good for about 18 to 20 years, and they're at the end of their life expectancy. We will be doing a lot of new interpretation for the property, new wayside exhibit panels. We'll be doing an interior restoration of the Wolff cabin, and we'll be doing some additional work on the west side of the Wolff house. And then we hope to be able to pursue new architectural design of a new visitor center. So the structure we're renovating over here is temporary. We inherited it, and we're renovating it to meet our immediate needs. But long-term goals is to have a more modern visitor center that will best serve not only the historic site but the public, where we can have an exhibit gallery in it and a gift shop and front desk operation and
That'd be awesome.
speak better to our needs. Yeah.
Oh,
That'd be
that's
great.
neat.
So
That's neat.
you deal with the best you can with what you got until better
Right.
days come.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're making a really good start.
I know. I'm going to have to hold on again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're done on this side, right?
Yeah, be careful.
Okay. This is funny because
you go.
the hip I had the hip surgery on is easier to bring over than
Can you
the other
actually
side.
take a photo of
Oh yeah. I got to take a picture of you too.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead.